The fluorescent hum of the ER was a phantom limb, still aching in Lily Bennett's bones, even as the Charlestown Bridge stretched out before her, grey against a bruised dawn sky. 26, 2 double shifts back to back, and her stethoscope felt like a lead weight dragging her down. It wasn't just the exhaustion, it was the crushing weight of her kid brother's medical bills, a silent companion that rode shotgun with her every mile. Keep the license clean, keep him safe. That was her mantra, whispered on every exhausted breath. The North End's cobbled streets blurred into a tunnel of brick and flickering gas lamps. Her mind spun, calculating. Rent, Leo's medication, the looming threat of another bill she couldn't afford. A sudden flash of brake lights ahead, sharp and red, ripped through her haze. Too late. The impact was less a crash, more a sickening crunch of metal. Her ancient Civic shuddered, then stalled. Lily's head snapped forward, the seatbelt biting into her shoulder. Airbag hadn't deployed, a small mercy. She blinked, adrenaline surging, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She'd hit something, hard. Before she could even process the damage, a figure unfolded from the sleek black silhouette of the car ahead. It was a Maserati. A Maserati. Her stomach dropped. This wasn't just a fender bender. This was disaster. He moved with an unnerving grace, tall and lean, every line of his expensive suit screaming power, his hands encased in black. Leather gloves seemed to absorb the dim light. Matteo Romano. The name flashed through her mind, a whisper she'd heard in hushed tones around the hospital. He turned, and his gaze landed on her. It wasn't angry, not exactly. It was something colder, sharper, like a predator assessing its prey. His eyes, dark and piercing, swept over her, then back to the crumpled rear of his luxury vehicle. A shard of cracked taillight glinted on the pavement, a tiny, glittering piece of her ruined life. Lily scrambled out of her car, her legs shaky. "Oh my God," she gasped, her voice thin. "I'm so sorry. I must have drifted. I'll pay for everything. I swear I have insurance, but it might take a while, my brother." The words tumbled out, a frantic, desperate plea. He didn't move. He just watched her, his expression utterly unreadable. His gaze flickered from her face to her beat-up car, then to the spot where the impact had occurred. He seemed to be looking for something, analyzing. Not just the damage, something else. The air around him crackled with an unspoken authority that froze her apologies in her throat. Then his eyes met hers again. They held a strange mix of suspicion and something akin to a warning. He took a single step closer, his voice a low, gravelly rumble that vibrated through the quiet street. "Stay put, Miss Bennett," he said, her name a surprise on his lips. "And stay silent. I'll handle this." It wasn't a suggestion. It was an order. And in that moment, as the first tendrils of true fear tightened around her chest, Lily knew her world had just irrevocably changed. Matteo moved. He didn't raise his voice, didn't make a show of it, but the change in the atmosphere was immediate, palpable. His phone was already pressed to his ear, his words clipped, guttural Italian that Lily couldn't understand, yet somehow conveyed absolute command. Within minutes it felt like a sleek black SUV glided to a stop behind her Civic. 2 men, built like brick walls in dark suits, emerged. They didn't even glance at Lily. Their focus was entirely on Matteo. He gestured, a subtle flick of a gloved hand, and the men went to work. The crumpled rear of his Maserati, the dent in her Civic, the cracked taillight shard. It all began to disappear. They spoke into radios, moved the cars with startling efficiency, and in what felt like a blink, the entire scene was wiped clean. No flashing lights, no curious onlookers, no police report. It was as if the collision had never happened, swallowed whole by the pre-dawn darkness and Matteo Romano's quiet authority. Lily stood frozen, watching, a knot of dread tightening in her stomach. This wasn't just power. This was something deeper, something that unnerved her to her core. When the street was once again pristine, only a lingering smell of burnt rubber hinting at the chaos that had been, Matteo turned back to her. He walked slowly, deliberately, until he was just a few feet away. The dark eyes that had been so cold now held a disturbing intensity, focusing solely on her. "This wasn't an accident, Miss Bennet," he stated, his voice still low, but laced with a chilling certainty. "Not a random one, anyway." Lily's breath hitched. "What are you talking about? I was tired. I drifted, I swear." He cut her off, his gaze unwavering. "The collision was engineered to plant a tracker on my car." He paused, letting the words sink in. "And you, Miss Bennet, were the unwitting instrument, a witness." The world. Tilted, staged, a tracker. Her mind reeled, trying to connect her exhausted drive to some shadowy conspiracy. It was too much. No, that's insane. I'm a nurse. I just work. I pay my bills." "Exactly," he said, stepping closer, his presence utterly dominating. "An innocent, which means you are now a liability, a target." He watched her face, noting the dawning terror in her eyes. "My rivals will know you saw something, even if you don't know what it was, and they won't hesitate." Lily felt a cold dread spread through her veins. Her brother, her license, everything she worked for. Was it all about to unravel because she'd rear-ended a Mafia boss? "I can protect you," Matteo continued, his voice softer now, almost persuasive, but still carrying that undeniable weight of command. "You need to be close, under my watch, for your own safety." He paused, and for the first time, a flicker of something almost human crossed his harsh features. "I have a code, Miss Bennet. I never harm. Innocence, and I never coerce." The words felt like a twisted irony. Never coerce, yet he was offering her an ultimatum wrapped in a promise of safety. Her independence screamed in protest. "I can't just drop everything. I have shifts. I have responsibilities. My brother needs me." She clutched her worn stethoscope, the familiar weight a desperate anchor to her normal life. "I can't be under anyone's watch." Matteo's expression hardened. "Your brother will be safer if you are safe. Your license will be clean if you are alive to use it." He didn't need to elaborate on the alternative. The unspoken threat hung heavy in the air. The chilling implication of the staged accident, the casual way he'd made the evidence vanish, the fierce control he exuded, it all painted a picture too terrifying to ignore. Lily looked at him, then back at the empty street where her life had just collided with his. She hated it, hated the loss of control, the chilling sense of being caught in something far too big for her. But the thought of Leo, vulnerable and dependent, made her swallow her pride, her fear, her defiant anger. She had no choice, not really. "What do you want me to do?" she finally asked, the words a bitter taste in her mouth, her voice barely a whisper. The offer wasn't one she could refuse. It was a gilded cage, and she was already trapped inside. The ride had been silent, the black SUV a discreet, impenetrable bubble moving through the still streets. Now, Lily stood in a foyer that dwarfed her entire apartment, the silence here even more oppressive. Marble floors gleamed under recessed lighting. A sweeping staircase curved upwards, disappearing into shadows. It was luxurious, pristine, and utterly suffocating. This wasn't protection. It was a gilded cage, and she was the bird. "Your things were collected," Matteo said, his voice cutting through the heavy quiet. He stood near a wide archway, his black leather gloves gone, revealing strong, capable hands. The lack of gloves made him seem marginally less intimidating, but no less in control. "Your brother is safe, unaware of the details. and your hospital was informed you're on an unexpected, urgent leave." Lily's jaw tightened. "My things? You went into my apartment?" The violation stung, sharp and cold. "And my job? Who gave you the right to do that?" His eyes, dark as midnight, met hers across the expanse of the foyer. "The right to keep you alive, Miss Bennett. You are a witness to a targeted operation against me. My rivals will not stop at the tracker. They will come for anyone connected, however tangentially." He gestured vaguely towards the staircase. "Upstairs, second door on the left. It has everything you need." She felt a surge of defiant anger, her medical ethics screaming in protest. "I have responsibilities, patience. My license isn't a game piece you can just move around." "And your life isn't a game piece they can take," he countered, his voice low but firm. Brooking no argument. "They want to know what you saw, what you might remember, and they will use any means necessary to get it." He paused, stepping further into the room, his gaze sweeping over the opulent furnishings. The collision was precise. A courier, small and quick, attached the device the moment of impact. "You saw him. You are the only one who did." Lily squeezed her hands into fists, her nails digging into her palms. The image flickered, a fleeting shadow at her peripheral vision, a glimpse of movement, almost imperceptible in the chaos. She'd been too stunned, too exhausted to register anything beyond the immediate terror. "I barely saw anything," she admitted, the words a desperate whisper. "Just a blur. A person, maybe. Too fast." Matteo nodded slowly, as if confirming a suspicion. "But you did see. Your nurse's eye. Your attention to detail. That's why you're here. That's why you're safe." He took another step towards her, and the air thickened with unspoken tension. "I need you to remember every detail, no matter how small." She wanted to scream, to lash out. Her carefully constructed life, built on shifts and empathy and late-night studying, had been shattered. Now she was trapped in a golden cage, expected to recall details of a crime she hadn't even known she'd witnessed. "I want to go home," she said, her voice trembling. "I want my life back." He simply watched her, his dark eyes like a boundless sea she could drown in. There was suspicion there, yes. A careful, calculating assessment. But beneath it a flicker of something else, something almost like curiosity, or perhaps something more dangerous. He was a predator, but she was finding herself strangely drawn to the dangerous allure of his absolute control, the way his presence filled every corner of the vast room. It was terrifying, yet undeniably captivating. "Your life is here now, Miss Bennett," he stated, his voice a quiet command. "Until this is resolved, you are not a pawn. You are an asset, and I protect my assets." He turned, heading towards a heavy mahogany desk across the room. "Now tell me everything you recall from the moment your car made contact." The power dynamics were palpable, a constant push and pull, and Lily knew with a chilling certainty that this was only the beginning. Lily woke in the vast, silent bedroom, the memory of Matteo's words still echoing. "Your life is here now." It wasn't a suggestion, it was a sentence. She paced the plush carpet, the thick silence amplifying her frustration. She hated being helpless, hated being a protected asset. Her life had always been about doing, about saving, about taking action. Here she was merely waiting. But then she saw it. From the ornate window, she watched a scene unfold in the courtyard below. A delivery truck had pulled up, its driver looking frantic, clutching a payment invoice. Another of Matteo's men, a stoic giant named Marco, met him. The driver gesticulated wildly, clearly upset about late payment. Matteo himself appeared, moving with that quiet authority. He didn't yell, didn't threaten. He just listened, his dark eyes fixed on the driver. Then he spoke a few low words, and Marco handed the driver a wad of cash, more than the invoice requested. The driver's face shifted from anger to bewildered relief. Pays his own debts. Not just pays, but overpays, smoothing things over. It was a glimpse, a tiny crack in the formidable facade, revealing a different kind of code than she'd expected. Later, over a breakfast she barely touched, the conversation circled back to the accident. Matteo sat across from her at a ridiculously long table, sipping espresso. "Your brother," he began, his voice surprisingly gentle. "He relies on you, doesn't he? You mentioned medical bills." It wasn't accusatory, just a statement, an acknowledgement of her burdens. He didn't press, but the simple recognition disarmed her slightly. He saw her, not just as a witness, but as Lily, the nurse, the sister. "Yes," she admitted, her voice a little rough. "He needs stability, and I need my license to give it to him." "Then you understand why we need to resolve this," he said, pushing a tablet across the polished wood. It showed a detailed street map of the North End, zoomed in on the collision site. "Tell me again. Every sensation, every sound. Beyond the impact." Lily took a deep breath, pushing down her resentment. This wasn't about her anymore. This was about Leo. She closed her eyes, trying to conjure the chaos, the split second before everything changed. The brake lights, so sharp, then the crunch, the smell of burnt rubber, metallic tang of the airbag that didn't go off. She focused, her nurse's mind shifting into observational mode, and a movement, just to the side, passenger's side, low to the ground, fast. Matteo leaned forward, his gaze intense. "A person?" "I think so. Small, agile, like a shadow, and something caught the light. A glint, metal maybe, or a buckle on their wrist." The memory was fleeting, a fragment, but suddenly it felt tangible. It was very quick, gone in a flash, but it was there, a flash of silver, right as they moved away from your car. He listened, his expression unreadable, but a spark of interest flickered in his dark eyes. A glint on the wrist. He typed something into the tablet. "Excellent, Miss Bennet. That's a detail no one else has." A strange sense of accomplishment settled in her. She wasn't just a captive. She was useful, she was doing something, and for the first time since the crash, the suffocating fear for Leo began to morph into something else. A fierce resolve. Matteo's world was terrifying, but he had resources, power. If she could use that power, even from within this gilded cage, to protect her brother, then she would. His protection, however constricting, was her only shield. The alternative was unthinkable. She had to trust him. For Leo, the air in the opulent apartment was heavy with unspoken terms. Matteo stood by the sprawling window, looking out over the cityscape, his back to her. Lily watched him, her heart a drumbeat against her ribs. She was a nurse, trained to observe, to assess, but he was an enigma wrapped in an expensive suit. He turned, his dark eyes locking onto hers. "This arrangement, Miss Bennet," he began, his voice devoid of warmth, "is not temporary. Not until my rivals are neutralized. You are the only one who saw the courier. Your memory, your unique perspective is crucial." Lily bristled. "Arrangement? You mean my imprisonment? I'm not a bargaining chip, Mr. Romano." The words tasted like ash, but she had to say them. Her autonomy, her very sense of self, was under siege. He took a slow step towards her, his presence utterly dominating the vast living room. "You are a protected witness," he corrected, his gaze unwavering, "and this is non-negotiable. Until the threat is gone, you stay here, you cooperate. In return, I guarantee your safety and your brother's." The mention of Leo was a calculated blow. It silenced her protest, a cold wave of dread washing over her. She hated the way he could weaponize her love for her brother, use it to bind her. But he was right. Leo's safety was paramount. Her nursing license, her career, her entire future. It all hinged on her ability to protect him. And right now, Matteo Romano was her only shield. He watched the conflict play out on her face, a flicker of something unreadable in his dark eyes. Then he gestured towards the dining table, already set with a simple, elegant dinner. "Eat! You haven't touched anything all day." She moved reluctantly, sitting at the enormous table, feeling small and insignificant. Matteo sat opposite her, not eating, just observing. The silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable, punctuated only by the clink of her fork against the porcelain. She picked at her food, her appetite long gone. "The glint," he said, breaking the quiet. "You're certain?" "It was on the courier's wrist." Lily nodded, grateful for the shift in topic, for something concrete to focus on. "Yes, a flash of silver, brief but distinct, like a watch or a bracelet or a clasp." She closed her eyes, trying to recreate the fleeting image. They were small, compact, moved like they knew exactly what they were doing, even in the chaos. Matteo leaned forward slightly, his gaze intense, capturing hers across the polished wood. His dark eyes held a dangerous allure, a quiet power that both terrified and fascinated her. There was an unspoken understanding passing between them, a strange intimacy born of shared peril. He wasn't just a threat, he was a fortress, and she was reluctantly finding herself drawn to the dangerous heat radiating from him. The air crackled, thick with a tension that had nothing to do with the courier, and everything to do with them. Her pulse quickened. He held her gaze for a long moment, then slowly, almost imperceptibly, a corner of his mouth tilted upwards, a ghost of a smile. "Good. That's more than we had." The subtle acknowledgement sent a strange warmth through her, a tiny spark of connection in the otherwise sterile environment. It was dangerous, she knew, to feel anything but fear and resentment towards him, but his proximity, his singular focus on her, was a potent cocktail. Later, alone in the luxurious bedroom, Lily paced. The proposal wasn't a proposal at all. It was an order, a stark declaration of her new reality. Her freedom had been stripped away, replaced by the suffocating safety of his gilded cage. She reached into the pocket of the jeans she'd been wearing since the crash, her fingers closing around the familiar crinkled paper. It was her hospital wristband from her last shift, still bearing the faint imprint of her patient's name, a tangible link to her old life, to the Lily she was, the Lily she longed to be again. The safety for Leo was paramount. She knew that. But the price was herself. She clutched the paper, its fragile edge digging into her palm. She was trapped, but she wasn't broken. Not yet. She would play his game, for Leo, but she would find a way out. She had to. The luxurious apartment, once a gilded cage, now felt like a suffocating tomb. Days bled into one another, marked only by the shifting light outside and the constant unnerving presence of Matteo's silent guards. Lily tried to find a routine, to read, to distract herself, but her mind always circled back to Leo, to her hospital, to the life she'd lost. The unease was a hum beneath her skin, a constant warning. She was in the vast living room, staring blankly at a priceless painting, when the doorbell chimed. It wasn't the soft, familiar ring of her old apartment. This was deeper, more resonant. Before she could move, one of Matteo's men, a quiet giant named Marco, was already at the door, his hand on a concealed weapon. He opened it just a crack, spoke a few low words, then stepped back, a small package. In his hand, He didn't hand it to her directly, but placed it on the polished mahogany table with a strange reluctance. It was a simple brown paper package, tied with twine. Innocuous, yet Lily felt a chill creep up her spine. This wasn't a delivery. Her heart pounded as she reached for it, her fingers trembling slightly. The twine was loose. She pulled it open. Inside, nestled on a bed of dark, crushed velvet, lay a single perfect red rose. Its thorns were impossibly sharp, glinting in the soft light. And beneath the rose, tucked into the velvet, was a photograph. Lily snatched it up. It was a picture of Leo, her brother, laughing, vibrant, innocent. A picture she'd taken only months ago, now defiled. Scrawled across the bottom in stark, menacing red ink were 3 words: "She watches him." The air left Lily's lungs in a strangled gasp. Her carefully constructed composure shattered. The fear she'd been holding at bay, the abstract dread of rivals and trackers, crystallized into a visceral, gut-wrenching terror. They knew about Leo. They had found him. The rose, the thorns, the picture. It wasn't a warning for Matteo. It was a warning for her. A cold fury, sharp and sudden, pierced through her fear. How dare they? How dare they touch Leo? "What is this?" she demanded, her voice shaking, clutching the picture. Before Marco could answer, the heavy front door swung open again. Matteo stood there, his dark eyes sweeping over the scene. The open package, the rose, the picture in Lily's trembling hand. His face, usually so controlled, tightened into a grim mask. He moved with swift, silent grace, crossing the room in 3 strides. He plucked the photo from her fingers, his gaze fixing on the red inscription. "This is a message," he said, his voice a low growl. "From my rivals. They want to scare you, to make you talk." "To make me talk?" Lily scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping her. "About what? I told you everything I saw. I didn't know I was witnessing." "Anything but a traffic accident." Her eyes burned with unshed tears, but her anger kept them at bay. "How did they get this? How do they know about Leo? You said he was safe." Matteo's jaw was clenched, a muscle working furiously. He handed the rose to Marco, who immediately took it away as if it were poison. "They have eyes everywhere, Miss Bennet. They've been watching me. And now they're watching you." He turned back to her, his gaze piercing. "This is not a game. This is a blood feud. Debt from my world, being called in, and you, unfortunately, are caught in the crossfire." He didn't offer comfort. He offered brutal honesty, his words painting a chilling picture of his dangerous existence. He spoke of old family rivalries, of unspoken codes and broken promises, of enemies who saw every weakness as an opportunity. He didn't name them, but the menace in his tone made their presence palpable. He was revealing his world, piece by horrifying piece, and it was far more brutal than she could have imagined. "Innocent lives," he'd said. Now Leo's was one of them. Lily looked down at her hands, still trembling. The terror for Leo was overwhelming, but it was quickly hardening into something else. She wasn't just an innocent caught in a bad situation anymore. She was a target, and so was her brother, and that changed everything. "What do we do?" she asked, her voice steady despite the tremor in her heart. No more questions, no more protests about her freedom. Just a fierce, unwavering resolve. This wasn't about her autonomy anymore. This was about survival, about Leo, and if Matteo Romano was the only one who could offer that, then she would fight beside him, even in his gilded cage. She would use every ounce of her intelligence, every observational skill she possessed. She wouldn't be a victim, not while Leo was in danger. The cold fury that had solidified Lily's resolve now felt like a suffocating blanket. She walked the perimeter of the vast living room, her steps echoing on the polished marble. Matteo's words, "a debt from my world," being called in, had chilled her to the bone. Leo's face, vibrant and innocent, was seared into her mind, a constant, terrifying reminder of the stakes. The rivals wanted her silenced. The police, if she went to them, would ask questions she couldn't answer without exposing Matteo, which would only put Leo in deeper peril. She was trapped between a rock and an even harder place. She couldn't just sit here, a protected asset in a gilded cage. It went against every fiber of her being. Her instincts screamed for action, for control, for her life back. She needed to think, to breathe, to touch something that wasn't a part of Matteo's world. Her small apartment, her worn books, her old phone with its familiar contacts, a lifeline. She had to go, just for a moment, to feel like Lily Bennett again. She waited until the late afternoon, when the guards seemed to settle into a quieter rhythm, the shift change. Approaching, her heart hammered against her ribs as she slipped out of the bedroom, moving like a ghost through the silent corridors. She'd observed the routines, the blind spots. The main door was out of the question, but there was a service entrance, rarely used, behind the kitchen. She remembered a loose latch on a delivery morning. A long shot, but she had to try. Her fingers fumbled with the old lock, sweat beading on her forehead. It clicked, a tiny victory, a surge of adrenaline. She pushed open the heavy door, stepping out into a narrow alleyway, the smell of damp brick and exhaust filling her lungs. Freedom, or a semblance of it. She didn't look back, just started walking, her pace quickening, her mind racing. She'd take the train, disappear into the city, then figure out how to get to her apartment, how to reach Leo. The city swallowed her, its noise and crowds a welcome anonymity after the oppressive silence of Matteo's palace. She walked for blocks, weaving through pedestrians, a desperate energy propelling her forward. She was almost there, almost to the familiar street where her apartment building stood. Just a few more turns. A sleek black car, so similar to Matteo's, glided to a stop beside her. Lily's breath hitched. Her stomach plummeted. Before she could even process it, the passenger door opened. "Get in, Miss Bennett." It was Matteo. His voice was low, devoid of emotion, but it carried an undeniable command. He sat in the back seat, a dark, imposing figure, his gaze fixed on her. Marco was in the driver's seat, his expression impassive. Lily felt a wave of crushing defeat, her fragile hope dissolving. How had he known? She stood frozen, the noise of the city suddenly deafening, mocking her futile attempt. "Now," he repeated, his voice barely audible above the traffic, but somehow cutting through it all. "Unless you prefer to discuss your options on a public street where anyone could be listening." His eyes flickered to a man lingering near a lamppost, too casually watching them. The subtle warning was clear. Her shoulders slumped. She was caught. Again. The fight drained out of her, replaced by a cold, numbing dread. She opened the door and slid into the back seat, the plush leather swallowing her. The door clicked shut, sealing her in. The car pulled away, effortlessly merging with traffic, as if this had all been a perfectly orchestrated plan. "You really think you can just walk away?" Matteo asked, his voice still. Calm, but with an edge of steel. He didn't look angry, just intensely, disturbingly focused. "After the message they sent? After what you witnessed?" Lily stared straight ahead, at the back of Marco's unmoving head. "I needed to think," she whispered, the words tight in her throat. "I needed to know I still had a choice." "You have a choice," he countered, his voice chillingly precise. "To be safe, or to be a victim, to protect your brother, or to expose him to the same danger you're in. Your testimony, if it falls into the wrong hands, could destroy both our worlds. Mine because it would expose my operations. Yours because they would silence you and anyone you care about to keep that from happening." He leaned forward slightly, his presence overwhelming the confined space. They aren't just looking for a courier, Miss Bennet. They're looking for you. You are a loose end, and loose ends get tied up permanently. The truth under pressure weighed down on her, heavy and inescapable. She was a witness, a target, a pawn, and every attempt to reclaim her independence only reinforced the reality of her gilded cage. She was trapped, irrevocably, in his dangerous world. Her flight had only proven how futile it was to try and escape. The sleek car pulled up to the imposing mansion, a shadow against the deepening twilight. Lily stepped out, her legs feeling heavy, the defeat a bitter taste in her mouth. Her failed escape attempt had only proven Matteo right. There was no walking away. She was trapped, a moth caught in a dangerous flame. Her shoulders slumped, but her chin remained stubbornly high. She wouldn't break. Not entirely. Matteo followed her inside, the heavy door clicking shut behind them, sealing her back into the golden cage. He didn't gloat, didn't chastise. His silence was far more potent, a constant reminder of his absolute control. She walked ahead, towards the vast living room, feeling his gaze on her back. She turned to face him, her hands clenched at her sides. "I understand," she said, her voice tight, devoid of emotion. "I can't leave. You've made that abundantly clear." Her eyes, though tired, held a spark of defiant fire. "But I won't be a puppet. I will cooperate for Leo's sake, but I will not be silenced." Matteo simply watched her, his expression unreadable. He walked to the liquor cabinet, pouring himself a drink, the clink of ice cubes, the only sound in the cavernous room. "You think this is easy for me, Miss Bennet?" His voice was low, rougher than usual, a subtle tremor underlying the controlled tone. He turned, holding the glass, but not drinking. His dark eyes met hers, and for the first time she saw something beyond the cold authority, beyond the dangerous allure, a weariness, a profound, almost crushing burden. "My life," he continued, a sweeping gesture encompassing the opulent room, "is a constant negotiation of threats and allegiances. Every move calculated, every word weighed. There is no anonymity, no quiet escape." He took a slow sip of his drink, his gaze distant, lost in a memory. "When you are born into this, you learn quickly. Innocents are the first casualty if you don't build walls, if you don't make sacrifices." Lily stared, mesmerized. This wasn't the ruthless boss, not entirely. This was a man speaking of the sheer, exhausting cost of his existence. "Sacrifices," she echoed, her voice softening slightly. He finally looked at her fully, a flicker of something raw in his dark eyes. "My family is my duty. My people are my responsibility. My code," he said, the words heavy with conviction, "is what keeps us from becoming monsters. Never harm innocents, never coerce, but it requires constant vigilance, and it is lonely." He paused, his gaze dropping to the amber liquid in his glass. "You, Miss Bennet, are an innocent caught in my war. My code demands I protect you, and your brother." The confession, the unexpected glimpse into the man beneath the impenetrable exterior, disarmed her completely. It wasn't an apology, but an explanation, a rare, vulnerable sharing of the weight he carried. He wasn't just asserting power, he was revealing the price of it. He understood her burden with Leo because he lived a similar, albeit darker, existence. A strange warmth bloomed in her chest, pushing back against the cold resentment. "My brother is my duty too," she murmured, a shared understanding passing between them. "And I will do whatever it takes to keep him safe." She met his gaze, her resolve hardening again, but this time it was different. It was a shared purpose, not just a coerced compliance. "Tell me what you need, every detail, every memory. We will find this courier. We will neutralize this threat." Matteo looked at her, a slow, almost imperceptible nod. A faint, almost smile touched the corner of his lips, a rare sight. Good, Lily, he said, using her first name for the first time, the sound a soft caress in the quiet room. Then let's begin again. He placed his glass down, the ice clinking softly. Tell me everything about that silver glint on the courier's wrist. Their goals were aligned, their dangerous alliance now solidified by a shared, silent burden. The forced quiet of the mansion no longer felt like a prison. It felt like a war room. Lily's mind, once frantic with despair, now hummed with purpose. Matteo's confession, his raw glimpse into the crushing weight of his world, had shifted something inside her. He carried a burden, just like she did with Leo, and if he was willing to protect her brother, she would use every ounce of her training, every instinct, to help him. She found him in his study, a cavernous room lined with books and dark wood, the scent of old paper and rich leather clinging to the air. He was on the phone, his voice a low, terse rumble, his back to her. He hung up, slowly turning to face her, his dark eyes assessing, questioning. I can do more than just remember a glint, Lily stated, cutting straight to it, her voice firm, resolute. As a nurse, I'm trained to observe details, not just symptoms, but anomalies, things that don't fit. She walked towards his large desk, her hands resting on the cool, polished surface. The courier, they were small, agile. That suggested youth or a build designed for quick, precise movements. Matteo leaned back in his chair, watching her, a flicker of interest in his gaze. Go on. The glint on the wrist, she continued, pushing past. The hazy memory, forcing it into sharp focus. It wasn't just metal, it was a specific kind of light, a duller silver, not polished. And the shape, it wasn't a sleek watch. It was wider, almost a cuff, and there was a texture to it, like etched lines, like a very specific piece of jewelry, or perhaps a medical alert bracelet. The last thought struck her with a jolt. Medical. Her world. Matteo's expression didn't change, but his intensity sharpened. A medical alert bracelet? Or something? Similar? Yes, Lily affirmed, her pulse quickening. It's a long shot, but if it was something distinct, something they always wear, it could be a key. It was almost like a woven metal. Not chain, not solid, more intricate. And it caught the light in a very particular way, almost like a dull sparkle rather than a shine. She was seeing it now, clearer than before, pulling it from the jumbled chaos of adrenaline and fear. It seemed too bulky for someone trying to be discreet, yet they moved. So fast it barely registered. He studied her for a long moment, his eyes boring into hers. He wasn't just listening to her words, he was evaluating her, her conviction, her unique way of seeing the world. The power dynamic was still there, a constant hum, but now it felt like a partnership, a dangerous dance of shared purpose. We need to find out if that's a common item in this area, Lily pressed, her voice gaining confidence, or if it's unique, if it belongs to a specific group, a subculture, someone who wouldn't just be an ordinary courier. Matteo leaned forward, his elbows on the desk, his dark eyes never leaving hers. You believe this dull sparkle is enough? It's a specific anomaly, she insisted. People trying to blend in don't usually wear something that catches the light in an unusual way, especially not something that looks personal. It was a mistake, or a tell, and I saw it. A slow, almost imperceptible nod. Very well, Miss Bennet. He reached for a phone, not the one he'd just used, but another, older model, its surface worn smooth. Marco, he said, his voice dropping into a low, authoritative tone, I need you to activate a specific search pattern, visual, discreet. We are looking for a unique piece of wrist jewelry. Dull silver, possibly a cuff with a woven or etched texture, worn by someone small, agile, likely young. Focus on areas around the North End, particularly where our rivals operate. Check pawn shops, street vendors, anything that might point to a specific type of metalwork or design. I want to know if it's common or if it's unique to an individual or a specific group. He listened for a moment, then added, prioritize speed and extreme discretion. No overt questions, just observation. If you find anything at all, no direct contact. Report to me immediately. He hung up, his gaze returning to Lily. Consider it done. A surge of triumph, cold and sharp, went through Lily. She wasn't just a witness. She was an active participant. Her skills, her intelligence were being put to use. The oppressive tension in the room eased, replaced by a focused energy. Their eyes met, a silent acknowledgement of the dangerous game they were now playing together. He had trusted her lead, and for the first time since the crash, Lily felt a fragile sense of hope that she could truly make a difference, that she could protect Leo, even from within Matteo Romano's dangerous, captivating world. The search became Lily's anchor in the swirling chaos of her new life. Matteo's network was vast, efficient, and utterly terrifying in its reach. Marco, the silent guard, often brought her tablets filled with filtered images, street vendor stalls, close-ups of wrists caught by discreet cameras, pawn shop inventories. She pored over them, her nurse's eye scanning for the anomaly, the unique glint she'd glimpsed. Days blurred into a focused hunt, and with every image she discarded, a tiny seed of hope grew. They were getting closer. Marco reported a spike in sales of specific older-style metal cuffs in a neighborhood known for a rival gang's presence. It wasn't a direct hit, but it was a lead, a direction. Lily felt a surge of purpose she hadn't realized she'd craved. This wasn't just Matteo's war, it was her fight for Leo. She was actively protecting him. But the isolation in Matteo's luxurious cage was relentless. She missed her old apartment, the familiar clutter, the easy rhythm of her roommate, Becca. Becca, quiet and unassuming, was the one person who knew her life outside of the ER, outside of Leo's medical bills. The urge to confide, to simply hear a familiar voice, became too strong to ignore. She asked Matteo if she could call Becca. His dark eyes narrowed, a flash of something unreadable in their depths. "Keep it brief," he'd warned, his tone flat. "No details, and assume the line is not secure." Lily had nodded, a desperate gratitude bubbling up. She called Becca, her voice trembling slightly as she heard the familiar ring. "Becca, it's Lily." "Lily, oh my God, where are you? The hospital said you were on leave. No one knew anything." Becca's voice was high-pitched, laced with an anxiety that seemed to vibrate through the phone. "I'm fine," Lily hedged, remembering Matteo's warning. "I'm just on an unexpected trip. Personal matters." She tried to sound breezy, but the lie felt heavy on her tongue. "I just wanted to check in. Everything okay at the apartment?" "Oh, yeah." "Everything's fine," Becca said, but her voice was still tight. "Just worried." "Lily, this sounds serious. Is it about that accident? The Maserati?" Lily froze. How did Becca know about the Maserati? She hadn't mentioned it in the brief, panicked call after the crash. "How did you know about the Maserati?" she asked, a knot forming in her stomach. A beat of silence. "Oh, I saw it. The news, you know. They said there was a minor incident in the North End, a black Maserati. And you weren't home. I just connected the dots." Becca's explanation was a little too quick, a little too rehearsed. "Are you in trouble, Lily? Is that man still involved?" I'm safe, Becca, Lily insisted, trying to reassure her, but a flicker of unease had already taken root. I'm working on something, a lead from the accident. I think I might have seen something important. A lead? Becca's voice went even higher, almost a squeak. Lily, are you sure that's wise? Don't you think it's better to just let things go? You don't want to get mixed up in anything dangerous. You have Leo, your license. Her words tumbled out, a frantic cascade of warnings that felt less like concern and more like desperate dissuasion. Who is this man, anyway? He sounds powerful. What does he want you to do? Lily tried to soothe her, but Becca's anxiety was infectious, and her constant questions about Matteo, about his methods, about what Lily was doing, felt strangely intense. Lily found herself deflecting, offering vague answers, the unease growing with every word. Becca finally said she had to go, her voice still strained, urging Lily to be careful. As Lily hung up, she walked over to the sprawling window, trying to shake the unsettling feeling. Becca had always been quiet, a little shy, but never this agitated. It was just worry, Lily told herself, dismissing the prickle of suspicion. Becca cared. But Matteo, standing silently in the doorway, hadn't missed the change in Lily's demeanor. He'd heard the clipped, anxious tone in Becca's voice through the thin veneer of Lily's forced calm. He'd seen Lily's face, the subtle flicker of doubt in her eyes as she'd ended the call. His gaze, sharp and assessing, lingered on Lily for a long moment, then shifted subtly towards where the phone lay. His instincts, honed by years of navigating deception, screamed a silent warning. He said nothing, but a plan began to form in the shadows of his mind. He would investigate the quiet roommate. Discreetly, the discreet hum of the mansion was shattered by the sharp ring of the phone. Lily, hunched over another stack of images, looking for that elusive glint, jumped. It was Matteo, his voice clipped, demanding her presence in his study. The urgency in his tone was unmistakable, a cold knot tightening in her stomach. She found him standing by his desk, a tablet in his hand. His face was grim, unreadable, but the air around him crackled with a dangerous intensity. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. "We have a problem, Lily," he stated, his dark eyes locking onto hers. "A significant one, and it involves your roommate." Lily's breath hitched. "Becca, what are you talking about?" A prickle of unease turned into a surge of alarm. He pushed the tablet across the polished wood towards her. "I had Marco investigate her discreetly. Your last call, her behavior, it raised flags." Lily looked down at the screen. Her blood ran cold. It was a series of photos. Becca, her quiet, unassuming roommate, was in every one, but not alone. She was with two burly men Lily didn't recognize, their faces hard, their expressions menacing. In one image, Becca was visibly shaking, handing over a thick envelope. In another, she was pointing vaguely towards the north end, her posture one of abject fear. A third showed a close-up of a text message exchange between Becca and an unknown number, detailing a delivery plan and a tracker. The dates on the texts lined up precisely with the day of the crash. The evidence was undeniable. It hit Lily with the force of a physical blow. Becca, her chosen family, the quiet girl who shared her cheap apartment, who listened to her endless rants about hospital politics and Leo's bills. Becca had been involved. She had arranged it. "No," Lily whispered, the word a strangled sound. Her vision blurred, the images on the tablet twisting into grotesque caricatures. "No, Becca wouldn't. She can't. She's my friend." Matteo's voice was softer. Now, almost empathetic, but still firm. "She didn't want to, Lily. They coerced her, loan sharks. She owed them. A lot. They threatened her, and then they threatened you. Your brother." The truth was a bitter, poisoned pill. Lily felt a wave of nausea, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical pain. It wasn't just the crash, it was the deception, the calculated manipulation by someone she trusted, the fear for Leo, for her license, suddenly felt secondary to this crushing personal devastation. "I want to see her," Lily demanded, her voice raw, laced with a cold fury she hadn't known she possessed. Matteo nodded, already reaching for his phone. "She's here. Marco brought her in an hour ago. She was terrified." Minutes later, Becca was led into the study. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her face blotchy with tears. She looked small, utterly broken, like a trapped animal. The moment her gaze met Lily's, a fresh sob tore from her throat. "Lily!" Becca choked out, stumbling forward, reaching for her. Lily recoiled, stepping back, her hands clenched. "Don't touch me," she said, her voice shaking with a mixture of anger and profound hurt. Did you set me up?" Becca crumpled, falling to her knees, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry, Lily. They made me. They had pictures of my family. They said they'd hurt them. They said they'd hurt you. They told me to find someone, anyone, to hit his car, someone who looked innocent. They said they needed a distraction for the tracker. I didn't know it was him, Lily, I swear. I just needed the money, and then they kept asking for more, and then they saw you. And I couldn't say no, I couldn't risk my family. Then they said they'd hurt Leo too if I didn't cooperate." Her confession tumbled out, a desperate, incoherent torrent of guilt and terror. "I never wanted to hurt you. I tried to warn you away from the lead because they said if you found out, they'd silence you." Lily stared at her, the anger warring with a horrifying understanding. Becca, caught in her own trap, had been forced to ensnare Lily. It didn't excuse it, but it explained the frantic phone call, the desperate warnings. The loan sharks had been playing a much larger game, using them both as pawns. Matteo, silent until now, stepped forward. "Who are they, Becca?" he asked, his voice low, dangerous. "Give us their names, everything you know." Becca looked up, her face a mask of terror. Then her eyes found Lily's again. The raw fear in them was palpable, but beneath it a desperate plea. "I can help," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I know where they meet. I can tell you their names. I can tell you everything they said. Just, please, protect Lily. Please don't let them hurt her." Lily looked from Becca's tear-streaked face to Matteo's unyielding one. The betrayal was a gaping wound, but Becca's desperate, genuine fear for Lily, her willingness to turn on her tormentors, offered a sliver of something else, a chance, not just for revenge, but for survival, for Leo. Becca was a broken piece of her past, but she was now also the key to their future. Lily took a deep, shuddering breath. "She helps us," Lily said, her voice firm, despite the ache in her chest. "She tells us everything." The concept of chosen family might be fractured, but the fight for survival was just beginning. Becca's raw, tearful confession had ripped open a wound, but it also illuminated the path forward with chilling clarity. The loan sharks weren't just exploiting a desperate girl. They were active collaborators with Matteo's rivals, using Becca as a weapon, a pawn in their dangerous game. Lily looked at her roommate, huddled and weeping, then at Matteo, whose face was a mask of grim resolve. The game had changed. The true enemy was no longer an anonymous courier or a vague rival. It was tangible, insidious, and deeply personal. "They used her," Lily said, her voice tight with a cold fury. "They threatened her family. They threatened Leo." The words were a bitter taste in her mouth, but they solidified her purpose. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about justice. Matteo nodded, his gaze hard. "They will pay, for their debt to Becca, and for involving you." His hand unconsciously went to his side. a subtle, almost imperceptible gesture that spoke volumes of his immediate violent inclination. Lily saw it, understood his world, his methods, a swift, brutal strike, clean and decisive, but that wasn't her way. Her medical ethics, her oath to do no harm, screamed in protest. She couldn't condone more violence, not when there was another path, not when it meant sacrificing her own integrity. "No," Lily said, stepping forward, drawing Mateo's gaze. "Not like that." His dark eyes narrowed. "They won't hesitate, Lily. This is how my world operates. They will come for Becca again, for you, for your brother." "And then what?" she challenged, her voice rising, infused with a sudden fierce resolve. "More bloodshed, more fear, it'll just be a cycle. I can't be a part of that. I won't." She met his intense gaze, refusing to back down. "There's another way, a cleaner way, a way that doesn't make us like them." She thought of the hospital, of the clear lines between right and wrong, between saving and destroying. She thought of her nursing license, her future. She wouldn't trade one cage for another, not even for safety. "Becca knows where they meet," Lily continued, her mind racing, connecting the dots, drawing on her sharp observational skills. "She knows their routine, and I know about the security cameras under the Charlestown Bridge, public cameras. The city put them in after that series of disappearances last year. They're still active. Police monitor them." Mateo listened, his expression unreadable, but a flicker of something, a spark of interest, kindled in his dark eyes. "We lure them there," Lily explained, her voice gaining confidence. "Becca arranges a meeting, tells them she has more information, a new payment. We position Becca and ourselves so that their interaction, their threats, their coercion is caught on camera. We record it, every word, every gesture." Her plan was forming, clear and precise. "Then we don't handle it. We hand the evidence to the authorities. An internal affairs contact I know, someone clean, someone who can act on it." She watched Mateo's face, searching for a reaction. His jaw was tight, his initial instinct for brutal efficiency warring with the unexpected logic of her plan. She knew he preferred direct action, but she also knew he valued his code: never coerce, never harm innocents. And a public legal exposure would be a form of justice that didn't spill innocent blood. It would also remove them from his world, not just kill them. He took a slow, deliberate breath, his gaze sweeping over Becca, then back to Lily. The tension was palpable, a silent battle of wills. He saw her unwavering determination, her fierce adherence to her own code. He saw the intelligence in her eyes, the cunning behind the seemingly simple plan. "You want to use their own greed and the city's eyes against them," Mateo finally said, his voice a low rumble. It wasn't a question, it was an acknowledgement. "You want to expose them, not erase them." "I want them to face consequences that don't make me a criminal," Lily countered, holding his gaze. "I want them off the streets, permanently, without more violence, and I want Becca safe, and Leo." A muscle worked in Mateo's jaw. He was weighing it, the brute force he commanded against the elegant, cold logic of her trap. He had always respected strength, and Lily's strength wasn't in weapons, but in her unwavering moral compass, her sharp mind. A slow nod. "It's audacious," he admitted, a rare, almost imperceptible ghost of a smile touching the corner of his lips. "And it carries its own risks. But it aligns with my code, Miss Bennet. Never coerce, never harm innocents, and a debt paid is a debt paid." He looked at Becca, who was watching them with wide, terrified eyes. "You will be safe, Becca. We will ensure it." The relief that flooded Lily was immense, surprising her with its intensity. He trusted her. He respected her. It was a powerful, intoxicating realization that deepened the unspoken connection between them. Okay, Lily said, moving closer to the desk, a map of the North End spread before them. Becca, you need to tell them you have a new payment, or better yet, information about Matteo, something juicy they can't resist. A meeting point, somewhere isolated but critically visible to those bridge cameras. The docks near the old fish market, under the main span. It's usually deserted late at night. Becca, though still trembling, looked at Lily, a flicker of resolve in her eyes. I can do it, Lily. I want to make this right. Matteo leaned over the map, his hand resting near hers, the accidental touch sending a jolt through Lily. Marco will scout the camera angles. We'll need a backup, a distraction should things go sideways. But the goal is no direct confrontation. His gaze met Lily's, dark and intense. This is your trap, Lily. You will spring it, but I will be close, always. The air crackled between them, a dangerous promise. Lily knew that even with her plan, the night under the bridge would be fraught with peril. But with Matteo by her side, a silent, watchful guardian, she felt an unexpected surge of courage. They were going to catch these sharks, and they were going to do it her way. The rain lashed down, blurring the city lights into smeared streaks of color as Lily huddled deeper into her coat. Midnight on the docks was a symphony of cold wind and slapping water, a fitting backdrop for the chilling confrontation ahead. The Charlestown Bridge loomed above them, a skeletal steel behemoth, its underbelly a maze of dark shadows and slick, grimy concrete. Every gust of wind bit through her clothes, but it was the icy dread in her stomach that truly made her shiver. Beside her, Becca was a trembling mess, clutching Lily's arm, her small frame convulsing with silent sobs. Her face was ashen, eyes wide and darting like a cornered animal. Lily squeezed her hand, offering a silent promise of protection, a silent apology for bringing her here, even though it was Becca's coerced actions that had started it all. Matteo stood a few feet away, an imposing shadow against the inky blackness. He was a force of nature, utterly still, utterly dangerous. His hands, encased once again in black leather gloves, rested casually at his sides, but Lily knew they held a silent, deadly promise. He was ready, ready for his kind of justice. A distant rumble of an engine grew louder, cutting through the wind's howl. Lily's breath hitched. They were here. A beat-up black sedan, its headlights cutting through the rain, pulled slowly into the deserted lot, its tires crunching on gravel. It stopped just under the dim glow of a flickering sodium lamp, directly beneath the bridge cameras Lily had confirmed were active. Two figures emerged, their bulky silhouettes unmistakable. The loan sharks, the men who had preyed on Becca, who had threatened Leo. Lily felt a surge of cold fury, sharp and invigorating. This was it. The men scanned the docks, their eyes narrowed, searching. One of them, a thick-necked brute, spotted them and grinned. Predatory flash of teeth. Well, well, if it isn't our little informant, he sneered, his voice thick and menacing, even over the wind. And what's this? Brought a friend to the party, Becca? Becca whimpered, burying her face in Lily's arm. Lily held her tighter, her gaze fixed on the approaching figures. They were walking slowly, deliberately, clearly enjoying the power they wielded. Matteo shifted, a subtle, almost imperceptible movement, but Lily felt the change in the air. The coiled tension in his body became a palpable threat. His dark eyes, gleaming in the weak light, were locked onto the loan sharks, promising swift, brutal retribution. His gloved hands flexed, a silent signal of what was to come. He was preparing to intercept them, to unleash his own brand of violence, to cut them down before they even reached Becca. His way. But Lily had already made her choice. This wasn't his fight alone. This was her fight, for her brother, for Becca, for her own integrity. She wouldn't let more violence consume them. As Matteo took his first deliberate step forward, a dark, predatory grace in his movement, Lily moved. She stepped directly into his path, her body a small, defiant barrier. "No," she said, her voice clear, cutting through the wind and the rising tension. She grabbed his arm, her fingers surprisingly strong on his gloved sleeve. "Not like this, Matteo." He stopped, his powerful frame freezing mid-stride. His head snapped down, his dark eyes burning into hers, a silent, furious question. The raw intent to kill was still palpable, simmering just beneath the surface of his controlled demeanor. "Your code," Lily insisted, looking up at him, her heart hammering but her resolve like steel. "You said it yourself. Never harm innocents. Never coerce. This is not your debt to pay with blood. This is my trap, and we do it my way." His gaze held hers, fierce and unyielding. For a long, agonizing moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. The loan sharks were closer now, their sneering faces visible, oblivious to the silent battle unfolding before them. Lily could feel the rigid tension in Matteo's arm, the immense force of will he was exerting to stay his hand. He was a man of action, of decisive, often brutal solutions. And she, a simple nurse, was demanding he stand down. He searched her eyes, a flicker of something unreadable passing through his own. Respect, annoyance, a grudging admiration, whatever it was enough. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the tension in his body eased. He let out a long, slow breath, a barely audible sigh lost in the wind. The predatory stillness remained, but the imminent threat of his violent solution had, for now, been put on hold. He was standing down, for her. Lily didn't waste another second. Matteo's grudging stand down was all the permission she needed. The loan sharks were just yards away, their faces visible in the dim, flickering light from the bridge. Becca was still trembling, but Lily held her gaze, a silent command passing between them. "Looking for us?" Lily called out, her voice cutting through the wind, surprisingly steady. She stepped forward, pulling Becca gently but firmly with her, moving them both into the precise patch of light cast by the sodium lamp, directly under the silent, watchful eye of the Charlestown Bridge camera. The two men stopped, surprised by her defiance. The thick-necked brute, the one Becca had identified as the ringleader, sneered. "Well, aren't you brave, little nurse? Thought you could run, thought you could hide." He took another menacing step. "Where's our money, Becca? You promised information. You promised a payment." Becca whimpered, but Lily squeezed her hand again, a silent reminder. "Becca's not paying you anything," Lily declared, her chin high. "You're the ones who owe her. You owe her for coercion, for threats, for ruining her life and trying to ruin mine." She didn't raise her voice, but every word resonated with cold, unwavering fury. The second man, smaller but with eyes like a viper, laughed. "Coercion? What are you talking about, doll? Your little friend here was happy to earn a few bucks, said she knew a good mark, a rich one." He winked, a sickening display of arrogance. "And she was right. You hit the jackpot, sweetheart, literally." Lily's heart hammered, but she pushed through the fear. They were incriminating themselves. "You forced her to do it," Lily pressed, her gaze unwavering, deliberately, drawing them out. "You threatened her family. You threatened my brother. You told her to find an innocent driver to stage a crash, just so you could plant a tracker on Matteo Romano's car. Wasn't that the plan? To get him vulnerable for your friends, his rivals?" The ringleader's sneer faded, replaced by a flicker of annoyance, then dawning suspicion. "What are you talking about?" he blustered, but his eyes darted around, suddenly less confident. "We don't know anything about no tracker, or his rivals. This is about Becca's debt, and now yours." He took another step, his hand dipping towards his jacket. Matteo, a silent, deadly sentinel, remained unmoving in the shadows, his presence a palpable threat to the sharks, but also a silent promise of support to Lily. He watched, his gaze fixed on her, a profound intensity in his dark eyes. "No," Lily said, her voice dropping, infused with icy certainty. "It's not about debt anymore. It's about what you did, what you just admitted to. And it's all being recorded." She gestured subtly upwards, towards the camera lens that gleamed wetly in the dim light, directly above their heads. The color drained from the loan sharks' faces. Their eyes, wide with sudden, terrifying realization, snapped upwards, then back to Lily's unwavering stare. The ringleader's hand froze at his jacket. The smaller man cursed, a raw, guttural sound. They had been caught. Their arrogance had been their undoing. The cold, impartial eye of the city's security system had witnessed their every word, their every threat, their every admission. Becca, feeling the shift, looked up at Lily, then at the frozen, terrified faces of her tormentors. A shudder of relief, profound and overwhelming, swept through her. She clung to Lily, but her sobs had stopped. Matteo, still in the deeper shadows, watched the scene unfold. The loan sharks, caught red-handed, were trapped. He saw Lily's unwavering courage, her sharp intellect, the way she had dismantled their power without a single drop of blood. It was a kind of justice he hadn't known, a precision that bypassed his violent solutions entirely. His face remained unreadable, but a slow, almost imperceptible nod of respect passed between him and Lily. She had proven her strength not with a weapon, but with her mind, her integrity. He had stood down for her, and she had delivered. The fight was over. Her way. The loan sharks were frozen, their faces a tableau of shock and sudden gut-wrenching fear. Lily didn't give them a moment to recover. Her hand, steady despite the adrenaline still thrumming through her veins, went to the small, waterproof recorder she'd hidden in her coat pocket. She pressed a button, stopping the recording, then quickly transferred the file via a secured app to her phone. Another tap, and the damning evidence, crisp and clear, was already winging its way to Detective Miller, her internal affairs contact. Justice, her way. "The police are already on their way," she stated, her voice cold, devoid of the tremor that had plagued her moments before. "They have everything, your threats, your admissions, everything." The ringleader snarled, finally snapping out of his stupor. He lunged, a desperate animalistic roar tearing from his throat. But before he could take a single step, Matteo moved. He was a blur of dark motion appearing from the shadows like vengeance itself. Not a punch, not a kick, but a precise, controlled intervention. A twist of a wrist, a firm, almost gentle shove, and the brute stumbled, tripping over his own feet, falling hard onto the slick concrete. The smaller shark, seeing his partner incapacitated, hesitated, then turned to flee. Marco, Matteo's silent guard, emerged from the deeper shadows, cutting off his escape, a hand on the man's shoulder that promised no mercy if he resisted. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing rapidly louder, their red and blue lights painting the rain-slicked docks. Legitimate law enforcement. Lily watched, a fierce, righteous satisfaction burning in her chest. This was it. No more shadows, no more private, bloody retribution, just the cold, uncompromising hand of the law. Becca, who had been clinging to Lily, finally released her, watching the scene with wide, tear-filled eyes. The fear was still there, but now mixed with a profound, almost disbelieving relief. The police cars skidded to a halt, officers spilling out, weapons drawn, flashlights cutting through the gloom. The loan sharks were cuffed, their protests futile against the official uniforms and stern faces. Lily turned to Becca, pulling her into a tight hug. "It's over, Becca," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You're safe." Becca clung to her, sobbing uncontrollably now, but these were tears of release, not terror. "Lily, I'm so sorry. I never meant—" "I know," Lily interrupted gently, stroking her hair. "I know, we'll figure it out. Together." Matteo approached, his presence a quiet anchor in the chaos. He didn't speak to Becca directly, but his gaze, though intense, held no judgment. Lily knew without him saying a word that Becca's debt would be taken care of, discreetly, irrevocably. No protection tax for her, but a silent act of grace, a consequence of his own code. The broken bond of their chosen family, forged in shared struggle, began to mend, stronger now, tempered by the fire of betrayal and forgiveness. Later, back in the oppressive silence of Matteo's mansion, the adrenaline began to ebb, leaving Lily feeling hollowed out, yet strangely resolute. She found Matteo in his study, pouring himself a drink, the amber liquid glinting in the soft light. The black leather gloves were gone. His face was unreadable, but his dark eyes, when they met hers, held a depth she hadn't seen before. "They're in custody," he stated, his voice low. "Your contact acted quickly. They'll be charged. Their ties to my rivals will surface." "Good," Lily said, her voice steady. She walked towards him, stopping just out of arm's reach. "Thank you, Matteo, for respecting my choice, for standing down." He nodded, a faint, almost imperceptible tilt of his head. "You proved your point, Lily. Your method was effective. Clean." He took a sip of his drink, his gaze intense. "But this doesn't change the fact that you were a target. You are a target. My world is not one you can simply walk away from, not without protection." "And that's where we differ," Lily countered, her voice firm, unwavering. "I appreciate your protection, Matteo, more than you know. It kept me and Leo safe, but I will not live in a gilded cage. I will not be owned. My autonomy is not negotiable." She met his gaze head-on, her own eyes burning with a fierce, quiet determination. "Any future we might have, any relationship will be on my terms. No more orders, no more assumptions, no protection tax on my freedom." His dark eyes searched hers, a storm brewing in their depths, but also something akin to respect. He was used to commanding, to being obeyed. This was new. "My nursing license is clean," Lily continued, her voice filled with quiet pride. "My integrity is intact. I exposed criminals without becoming one myself. I did it my way, and that's how I will live my life." She took a deep breath, the weight of the last few weeks finally lifting. "I need my life back, my own life, and I will have it." He didn't respond immediately, just watched her, his expression a complex mix of challenge and something she couldn't quite decipher, but in his silence, in the way he held her gaze, she knew he understood. The battle for her autonomy had been won. Months later, the North End held a new landmark, not a flashy restaurant or another historical plaque, but a discreet storefront nestled between a bakery and a florist. The Becca Clinic, debt relief and community support. Matteo had funded it quietly, anonymously, a tangible manifestation of his code, paying his debts, never coercing, but for good this time. It was a place for people like Becca, caught in impossible situations, a safe harbor from the sharks that preyed on desperation. Lily had visited, a quiet pride swelling in her chest. Becca, eyes brighter now, had hugged her fiercely, the fractured bond of their chosen family mended and strengthened, built on a new foundation of truth and forgiveness. Lily, too, had reclaimed her life. The familiar scent of antiseptic and stale coffee filled her lungs as she walked the hospital corridors at dawn, her stethoscope once again a comforting weight around her neck. Her nursing license was clean, her integrity fiercely intact. Leo was thriving. His medical bills a distant, manageable memory thanks to the new, stable system she'd meticulously built. The gilded cage was gone, replaced by the hard-won freedom of her own choices. She had set her boundaries, clear and uncompromising, carving out a space where her autonomy reigned supreme. Her phone buzzed. A text message. No name, just a black coffee cup emoji. Lily smiled, a soft, private curve of her lips. She knew who it was. She pushed through the revolving doors into the cool morning air, the city already humming with life. He was there, leaning against a sleek, dark car, not the Maserati, but something equally understated and expensive. Matteo Romano. He wore a tailored suit, as always, but his hands were bare, no black leather gloves. His dark eyes, as intense as ever, met hers across the pavement, holding that familiar, dangerous allure, but now softened by something new. Respect. He pushed off the car, holding out a steaming cup of coffee. "Double espresso, extra shot," he said, his voice a low rumble devoid of command, imbued instead with a quiet offering. "Just how you like it?" Lily took the cup, her fingers brushing his. A spark, familiar and undeniable, arced between them. "Thank you," she said, taking a slow sip, the bitter warmth a welcome comfort. Long shift. "I imagined," he replied, falling into step beside her as she began to walk, not towards his car, but towards the small park across the street, her usual post-shift ritual. He simply walked with her, matching her pace, a silent, watchful presence. He didn't ask about her day, didn't demand her time. He simply existed beside her, a powerful, dangerous man navigating her ordinary world on her terms. He understood now. No protection tax, no coercion, no gilded cages, just quiet companionship, shared moments, and a deep, unspoken understanding of the two very different worlds they inhabited. He glanced at her, a hint of that rare, almost imperceptible smile touching his lips. "Any plans for your day off?" Lily looked up at him, the morning sun catching the deep warmth in his dark eyes. The tension that had once defined their connection had softened, mellowed into a warm, watchful hope. Their future was unwritten, a blend of roses and shadows, of autonomy and undeniable attraction. It was dangerous, exhilarating, and entirely on her terms. "Coffee," she said, a small smile playing on her lips. And then, maybe, something entirely unexpected. She met his gaze, a silent challenge, an open invitation. The game was still being played, but now she was calling the shots. If you enjoyed the video, tell us where you're watching from, and subscribe to the channel to keep up with our content.